Thank you, George. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I know you've been waiting for this for the past, hour and a half now. So I want to start off with a quick, probably a rhetorical question, right? If a company out there announces that we want to be known as an exceptional company that hires exceptional people, that produces exceptional products, and generates exceptional earnings by selling to exceptional clients, who in this room would want to work at that company? Just by a raise of hands. Not very many. Oh, I'm a little surprised. And by that very same measure, who in this room would want to buy from a company and would trust that company when purchasing something from that company? Still not that many. Is everyone sleeping? Everyone's got a food coma here. So, last question. And again, another rhetorical question there. Who in this room would want to invest in that company? Of course. So the reason why I bring that up is because every exceptional company has one thing in common. It is led by an exceptional CEO. And by that very same measure, I'm talking about someone that is our speaker today, Chad Kalland, who has grown the company, went into the company with 6 employees, saw an opportunity that perhaps some may have overlooked, and said, you know what? I'm going to take this company from 6 employees, grow it to upwards of 600. Go from 4 million to 12 million within a matter of a year, and ultimately grow it to about 100. So with that said, I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Chad Kalland with Vac2Go. You have your mic on?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. So Chad, thanks for joining us today.
No, thank you.
Why don't you take us back to the early days? What even put Vecta on the radar for you?
Okay.
Because I know today it says CEO at Vac2Go, and we'll jump into that.
Yeah.
But Vecta is really where you went in and created this accelerated growth. So tell us about the early days of, how did they even end up in your radar? And 6 employees, anyone with a sane mind would have probably said, you know what?
Right.
I don't know. This seems a little too risky. I noticed concentration risks. I noticed only 2 clients, right? Only 2 customers at the time. Okay, $4 million in revenue, but at the same time, so what?
Yep. Yeah. So my entire career I was spent in industrial services, environmental services. In 2011, a former employer of mine, Kenny Rouse, reached out to me. He had an opportunity to start his own business. I was working as a consultant on the BP spill in 2010, got recruited to come over to Houston. So I had set up shop here in 2010. My wife and I were expecting a child, had a job with benefits. And so Kenny called me, was starting Vecta, and asked me to join. And like you said, at the time it was too risky.
Yeah.
It was, like I said, I needed the benefits. I was comfortable. I just started this new job. I didn't want to jump right away. So I told him, it's not no, but it's not now, right? But we continued talking. So I knew Kenny, trusted Kenny, knew that he knew the industry really well because we had worked together for so long. And then in 2013, I realized, the time's right. I felt like I had something to offer to the company. I had learned, enough along the way that I could bring some skills to complement what he did well. Kenny was great operationally. I was more sound, kind of in the background, running the business. He was busy. So I knew we'd make a good team, but it was still scary. But I remember the call. I was actually having a crawfish boil at my house. And, it was Saturday afternoon, got off the phone with Kenny, and went outside and told my wife, and I said, yeah, I'm going to join Kenny. And my neighbor next door, she's like, why would you want to do that? Why would you throw it all away and go take a chance? But, it was just an opportunity to finally bet on myself. I had helped people grow their businesses before. This was an opportunity for us to do it ourselves. So like you said, I joined them. We had 6 employees and 2 customers. So, but I knew that we could put some people together, put a team together that could help us grow, and that's what we started doing.
Yeah, and what really stood out to me is the 300% growth in the first year you joined. I mean, that's very admirable. And then of course, taking that again and using that to get to 30 million, and then attracting a private equity investor to take it to 100 million, growing it from 6 employees to all the way to 600 employees. Clearly the playbook that probably got them 2 customers, and maybe even the playbook that got you to 12 probably was not the same playbook that was going to get you to 100,
For sure.
right? Or even to a 30.
Right.
So what changes were you seeing, and again, what sort of potential were you going to see as you were making those shifts?
Yeah. So in the early days, it was kind of easy, right? We were hiring people we knew, people we had worked with in the past. So we knew who our customers, we knew who we were hiring. We could kind of control the quality of the people we were bringing in. As we started to scale a little bit, it got a little more difficult, right? We were hiring people that we might not know as well. We were taking chances on people. So that was one thing that changed. But one thing that stayed constant is we stayed close to our customers. We built relationships with customers. We built off the 2. The reason we had 2 is because they knew who we were.
Certainly.
So we started leveraging kind of our reputations and our relationships in the business, and really connecting with customers that we could build partnerships with.
Yeah. And part of your value creation with this particular company was growth through acquisitions.
Sure.
So let's talk about that. Obviously, we're here at the M&A forum, right? So naturally, we're going to talk about what's, not necessarily just the exit, but also the acquisition part of it. So what, first of all, triggered the need to acquire companies, and for you to say, that's rather an opportunity rather than us just maybe hiring more people or rolling out a new service line or whatever it might be. Yeah.
So we grew it organically to about 28 million when we sold to our first private equity partner, and at that point we knew that we wanted to continue to grow, and we would probably have to make some acquisitions to do it. The first thing that we recognized is we were doing a little bit of hydro excavation, which is where and we were doing it for utility companies, right? Where we're really digging holes for new utility lines. We knew that to really scale that portion of the business, that it made more sense to buy a company, right? The trucks are expensive. Finding drivers is hard. There's a lot of challenges to the business that if we could find a partner that could help us grow that part of our business, it just made more sense. So we were able to find a partner in Dallas that we were able to acquire early on. We sold to private equity in October, and we closed that acquisition in January. So it was we had been talking before. Kenny and I didn't have the money to make that kind of acquisition, but with a PE partner, we could.
Of course.
So then, as customers would come to us with new services that they would ask if we could provide. One, we didn't want to jump into something that we couldn't do well. So our first option was always to look. Could we find the right people who we could bring on board, people we could trust to help us grow that? And if we couldn't find that, then we start looking at, is there someone out here who's doing it well that we could go acquire? And that's what we did with the next 2 acquisitions.
Fantastic. And jump that into just offering new service lines. It's so tempting, and I've seen this firsthand, where many companies will fall prey to the temptation of trying to be everything to everyone. And I always have to push back on that, because that's what dilutes value, especially if you're geared towards value creation. Right. So how did you perhaps avoid that temptation and really fine tune which service line was actually going to be focused towards? You said, you're very customer and customer relations focused. So it was going to be very customer focused, and of course drive that level of not just revenue, but long-term customers, because really that's what, of course, a PE is going to value.
Right. So we had the benefit when we worked together previously for another environmental company. We were doing the industrial service, environmental remediation type work, and we also had a spill response group. And what we noticed is when a big spill would happen, they'd pull all of our people that work day to day, send them off on a spill, and leave our customers high and dry. Right. We wanted to do something different. We didn't want to get to a point where a service line was going to pull away from what we did well, the bread and butter, what built the company. So when we looked to add service lines, we found things that were closely related to our work inside the process, right? We did a lot of work inside chemical plants and refineries, doing turnarounds. So we'd build relationships with the turnaround planners. And if there was a task that was done 1 or 2 steps before us or 1 or 2 steps after us, that made sense, right? But if it was farther down the line and it was something that we couldn't control, we just, we would rather connect them with a provider who did that, like maintain the relationship and say, look, I'm not going to charge you the markup, but this is who you need to talk to. So we could keep kind of our scope of services tight, but still grow.
Fantastic. And, what I typically see is speed to market is everything, right? That will separate you from so many of the competitors that are perhaps in that marketplace trying to just take a piece of the pie. So everything in business has a shelf life, right? Whether it be your customers, whether it be your employees, whether it be new deals or opportunities that come across your table. And if you're not acting on that, and if, more importantly, if you have disruption, you're getting left behind, right? If you don't make it to market in time, your competition is leaving you behind and outpacing you. So what parts of Vecta did you focus on with urgency?
Most important was employee retention, right? We made a point to invest in our employees and really give them opportunities for growth, right? And that kind of comes from our background. Kenny and I were not business people. We both came up in the environmental industrial services field. I left a business where I was a director of field services. He left a business where he was a division manager. And all of a sudden we're CEO and president, right? Our CFO left a business where she was a bookkeeper accountant. Now she's our CFO. So we recognize that if we could provide similar opportunities for growth for employees, they stay around, right? As long as they had somewhere to go. Let's give them somewhere to go inside of our company, right? So that was the most important. And then the second one was customer retention. And we did that by connecting our employees with our customers. Our sales model was an account manager model. So when we would get a new account, we'd embed, one person to manage that account, right? So they were inside the fence line working with this customer every day, building a relationship, spending time talking about kids and hobbies, but also what needed to be done. So they became kind of a trusted resource to their customers. And that allows us to kind of gain traction in that facility. So we may start out providing one service, and that's how we would expand our service lines and say, okay, can you do this one? And we do that. So we were able to keep our employees by giving them room to grow, but also keep our customers by really showing them that, we had one person dedicated to them, and they were a priority to us based on that relationship.
Yeah, certainly. And, people, you keep bringing that up. And I mean, it's your employees that are fulfilling your brand promise to your customers, right? And that really reinforces your reputation. So tell us a little bit more about that. Again, what kind of a culture did you have in place? And what were you doing as a CEO? Exactly. How did you stay not just in front of your customers, but what were you doing to kind of create this level of interaction with your employees where they felt like, I actually belong here. I want to work here for the next 10 years. And it wasn't a place where someone was, especially your high performers, were essentially ready to get poached by one of your competitors.
Right. Well, I think part of it was because we had come up in the industry, we knew what the guys did every day, right? We knew what our crews were going out to do every day, so we could relate to them. If they called with a technical question, we didn't say, okay, well, you have to talk to this guy because I don't know what that looks like. And that helps, right? So we created a culture where people could ask questions. We wanted people to grow. We wanted them to learn. We wanted them to take chances. So we'd give them room to make their own decisions. knowing that some of them, they weren't all going to work out, but within limits, they had limits that they could make their own decisions. So giving people ownership of their work, I think means a lot. I think I use this kind of silly analogy of the goldfish.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I think this theory kind of is, if you give a goldfish a big tank and clean water and good food, it'll grow to the size of its container, right? Well, if you give an employee, a good workplace, kind of free from drama and everything else, and you give it challenging and rewarding work, and you give it opportunities for growth, same thing happens. So that's what we try to do.
Certainly. So let's move towards the private capital aspect of it. In order to attract private capital, I certainly believe that you have to be private capital worthy, right? So what were you doing up until the 30 million mark that signaled to the first PE investor that you were worth investing in, Vecta was worth investing in, and it's not, you had a reason to exist?
Yeah. Part of it was we were providing a service that these facilities cannot do without, right? They need to have their equipment cleaned and maintained to stay operational. So providing mission critical services was a big one for us. We didn't realize that was what private equity was looking at. We just knew it was a way to make some money, and that we were providing a service that they needed. But as we started to grow and talk to more people, we realized it. Early on, because we were financing the business, we needed something where the revenue was pretty steady. We didn't have big peaks and big valleys because we couldn't make. We wanted to make sure we were able to make payroll.
Yeah.
Right. But private equity looks for that, right? They look for revenue that's kind of steady across the board, not a lot of peaks and valleys. And because we had employee retention and customer retention, the work was recurring. So we were going to the same facilities every day. So the recurring revenue, the consistency of the revenue across the calendar, and those things, they found us the first time. They started, you grow a business, you start getting phone calls from private equity, and and we started getting calls early on. And we just, initially we weren't ready. We kind of had a vision of where we wanted to go. And then, someone came to us who really had their own vision on what they could do, and it aligned with what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
We wanted to grow a regional company, not just 2 locations. They had done their research on the industry, so they kind of knew what we were talking about. So it just made sense.
Yeah, and that played a role in the growth through acquisition.
That played a role in growth through acquisition.
So let's now bring in the second private equity partner. And what do you believe you had in that second relationship, or that attracted that second relationship that you probably didn't have in that first one?
I think our track record of making acquisitions helped. Our ability to greenfield locations outside of just the Gulf Coast. We were able to put an office in Jacksonville. We were able to put offices in Decatur, Alabama. So we showed that we could grow, in the regionally, right, in the Southeast. I think that they looked at that and realized there's still a lot of green space that we weren't touching, so they could take that game plan and apply it to a larger geography. I think that helped. The continuity of the leadership team helped. We had been together from the very beginning. So, they looked at us and thought that, and we were making good margins, which is important, right?
Certainly. And, again, I'm sure that there were 2 very different traits. If you could go back and advise yourself on how you would structure the deal and perhaps negotiate and things to look out for in the second deal versus the first deal, what did that look like?
Yeah, so both of them were good partners, right? And I learned a lot from both. The first one really taught me about M&A, really taught me even what private equity partners were looking for. The second one taught me how to really scale a business. We thought at 100 million we had scaled, and we have visions to now double that and double that again. So putting systems in place, really the importance of process and those type things. So both of them were great learning experiences. What I would have done differently, though, is I didn't pay enough attention, and maybe we just didn't know enough on how the debt was structured. The debt was structured in a way that it was pulling a lot of cash out of the business, so it really kind of hamstrung our ability to grow, hamstrung our ability to make acquisitions, which was part of our success story. So had I known then what I know now, I would have paid a lot more attention to the debt structure around the deal, and probably negotiated a better deal for us.
Fantastic. So fast forward now to Back2Go,
Yeah.
right? Who was essentially a vendor, if I'm not mistaken, a vendor from whom you were renting equipment from while you were at Vecta.
Right.
So that's really interesting. It's unique that you went from again serving in a company that was the customer side, and then now you became the vendor.
Yep.
Right. So what attracted you to this particular company, and what are you doing differently here?
What attracted me is a lot of the things I saw a potential in the company that was successful, but was kind of idling. You know, private equity bought Back2Go in 2023 from the original founder. Couldn't really find anyone to lead the company, so it was generating good revenue, generating profit, but wasn't growing.
Yeah.
And I recognize, I have a history of growing businesses. Whether even before I, grew Vecta, I helped other people grow theirs. So I saw a company that was successful, with a good team in place, high quality people that we could take, really just put a little bit of gas to in a strategy of growth. How can we expand the service lines? What geography should we be in? Are there companies we can acquire? And recognize that there was a lot of room in front of us for those opportunities. So,
yeah.
And I knew the company. I knew the quality of the trucks that they provided. I knew the level of service they provided. So there was a lot to like about the opportunity.
Fantastic. Here, I want to share something with you. So here's what's coming to mind. I don't know if you've heard that parable about the two shoe salesmen that go to a remote island.
No.
So two shoe salesmen go to a remote island. One calls back and says, no one's wearing any shoes here. There's no customers. The other one calls back and says, well, no one's wearing any shoes over here. Everyone's a customer, right? Yeah. So to me, you sound like the second shoe salesman that's looking for opportunities where others are looking at, others are seeing problems. So, again, for business owners that are in this room that are either looking at an exit at some point, or they're eyeing some sort of an acquisition and they want to grow through acquisition, what sort of advice can you give to those people?
Growing through acquisitions it's the fastest way to grow. It's not the least expensive, but it's the fastest way to grow. But it's important to pick the right partner, like with most things in life, right?
Yeah.
You pick the right partner, and your efforts compound. They don't add to each other; they compound, right? So it's important to really understand the company you're buying, the people inside that company, not really the service they provide. You find a lot of companies that provide services, right? But understanding who in the business makes the needle move and invest in those people, right? So for that part, if you're looking to exit the business, is that the other part of the question? Yeah. Looking to exit a business, when I left Vecta, I didn't have plans to join Back2Go. I didn't know what I was going to do. My wife and I talked about taking some time off and just, figuring it out, seeing what comes.
Right.
Have a plan. I wish I had a plan. I'm grateful for where I landed, right? But for 2 months, I was kind of in the wind and not sure what I was going to do, what the next day looked like. So have a plan on what you want to do. But really, someone asked me before the event, what's one thing you would want people to take away from this? And it really is, life is going to present you a few opportunities to bet on yourself, right? Not many, but it's going to present you a few real opportunities to bet on yourself.
Certainly.
Take that chance. Just bet on yourself.
Absolutely. So distill your playbook, your value creation playbook down to 3 words.
Invest in people.
Ah, wow. Short, simple, and sweet.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, I'm going to open up for Q&As. Jason Jimenez.
So speaking to some of the members of the last couple months, one topic has keep coming up about the areas of technology. How is technology being impacted when you are either setting up to sell or acquisitions? Where is it fallen through that you wish you now knowing what you know?
So at Back2Go, when I got there, we have a lot of systems, but the systems aren't communicating. So we have access to a lot of data, but all that data is backward looking, right? It tells us how well we did last month, but it doesn't tell us anything about what we should do next. So really leveraging the data you have, to make data-informed decisions going forward is really the most important thing a CEO can do. It's easy to read a report. Everyone in this room can read an Excel spreadsheet or a graph, but really understanding what goes into that and how that impacts the decisions you make going forward is how you can leverage the data to your advantage.
Certainly. Who else has a question? Champ.
Thank you again for your presentation. I had one question. One of the considerations we have in our investment strategy is locality focus. Being operators first, we find that that's pretty helpful for us. But as you look further afield in different locales, what are the considerations you had about maybe how far to go, the kind of the challenges you might have not being there yourself? What were some of the things going through your mind at that point?
So when we were growing Vecta, we thought of the same things that we thought of at the very beginning. Who is the right person to build this office around? When we went out to Jacksonville, we went out to meet one person. He brought some people with him, and we realized really early on that one of the guests at dinner was the right person. So really building relationships with people you can trust, and then giving them the opportunity to grow was the most important. We also followed our customers. If our customers were, the reason we ended up at dinner in Jacksonville is because a customer had asked us to go over there and provide to do some work, and we met a group of people through that. So our first step into a new market was usually drawn by a customer. So kind of knowing where your customers are, but then also what are other companies around there who aren't customers that you could help use to grow.
Hi, Chad. I was in the industry through the great financial crisis.
Yep.
You know what that's like.
Yeah.
And we're in the petrochem industry now, sort of in this elongated recession. You talked about, your balance sheet and your bank, and that came to the dark side as a banker now. So how would you advise folks that are sort of in the petrochem sector now to build their company to go through the cycle, and also, I don't know, the people in the company operations balance sheet? Thank you.
Yeah. So what we were able to do is diversify. So not all of our work was petrochemical, oil and gas. We started out there. We were cleaning tanks. We were providing hydroblasting services on heat exchangers, things like that. But we recognized that utility services are more stable, and working for municipalities and things like that are more stable. So if you have the opportunity to diversify your customer base, that certainly helps. Because the reality is utilities are more stable, but there is some fluctuations, right? But if you're spread out across multiple industries, chances are they're going to balance each other out for the most part. That's the most important thing. And then, the second one is, knowing that if you are heavily focused in oil and gas, you just have to have a balance sheet that can help you ride the downturn. You can't be over leveraged and then you have a bad quarter and now you don't have any cash to spend.
Who else?
Donald Seckle with Texas Growth Power. We had a brief meeting before this. I had a question. I asked you, we were talking about I want to grow my lab in an industrial service company to repair hydraulics. And I made the comment that when you said you grew to 100 million, I said, I don't think my business can scale to that. We're fine to grow, but I don't think it could scale to 100 million. You said, well, you didn't think that either. Right. I've been thinking about that ever since. So thank you.
You planted a bug.
Some comments on the mind shift, or maybe how I could start thinking and see that 100 million number a little bit more realistic.
Yeah. So 100 million was never our goal, right? We never had a goal to get to 50 million or anything else. Our goal was to continue to grow by acquiring customers, right? And acquiring and then building, expanding the business to new markets. So we didn't put like a finish line on it. So had we said we were going to grow to 100 million, I'm not sure we would have made it there. It was more of kind of an open-ended, we want to continue to grow. And by doing that, making decisions based on what's right now and what's going to provide us stability next year and the year after, probably freed us up from making some decisions that might have been made had we put a $100 million kind of end line on it.
Chris?
Chris Beasley. I got see younger people tell me that customers today don't have the patience or desire to have a relationship with vendors. And you mentioned that you built your business on the account management, those relationships.
Yeah.
Have you observed any trend like that yourself?
No, I think, I think that the fact that so many people are in this room now means that personal connection still matters. I think personal connection will always matter. I think AI will change maybe the way we do business, but it won't change the way people still interact. I think, I guess the short answer is no. I don't see that. People still want interaction. They still want to be able to pick up the phone when something goes wrong and talk to a human on the other line who can relate to their problems. Hi, Rachel.
I'm Rachel Kersey. For those who don't know, Chad, I know you quite well, and I would just like to ask a question about that. I know that you'll know the answer. You talked to me at length about growing individuals within your organization and how you grow your people that leads to significant results for the company. Could you just elaborate on that for those in the room who haven't heard that from you? Because that is something that has left a big impression on me personally when you talk about growth within a company.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So when people ask me kind of what's the most proud of, someone asked me earlier, what I'm most proud of. One of the things that gives me just joy is one Saturday I was sitting at home and I got a FaceTime call from an employee, and I answered it, and he turned his phone around to show me the picture of his new house. Right now, Courtney was a guy who came to our business his first job was a temp. He had never been on an industrial service job site before, and 8 years later, Courtney was managing multi-million-dollar turnarounds. Right. Giving someone like that an opportunity to grow, the confidence that they can, be something more than just a temp on an industrial service job site, it makes all the difference. Seeing people change their life, and knowing that maybe we provided a little bit, we played a little small part in that, really makes the job rewarding. It's $100 million growing a business to $100 million is a big deal. I get that, right? But really being part of someone's personal journey and watching them change their life is equally rewarding.
Certainly. I mean, again, I'm sure that your definition of success has changed over the years.
For sure.
Yeah. Who else has a question? Nadir?
If you asked thank you for your presentation. It actually spoke to me deeply. If you ask their customer and an employee how they feel when they interact with your organization, what would their answer?
I think in both cases they would say it's a partnership. Our customers need to make money, right? We can't charge them whatever we want, treat them however we want. It's a partnership. Same way with an employee. It has to be a relationship that's mutually beneficial, built on trust, and mutual respect. So I would think that if you asked an employee or a customer, you get the same answer.
Thank you.
One last question.
I was just going to ask a question. With the first company, maybe I missed it. Was that company sold, and that's where you exited?
We sold at $25 million to the first private equity. So we took some chips off the table, rolled some back in. Then we grew it from there to 100, and sold to a second private equity group. We kind of outgrown the first group. Took some more chips off the table, rolled some more back in, and then after about 18 months, that's when I exited.
Wonderful. So before we wrap up, Melissa, I know you had already spoken about the October event, which is the women. Is it Women Business Owners Month? now I've got it. National Women's Business Month. I think it's something. Right. Okay. So, if we can just encourage everyone to, again, we're really trying to generate excitement there. If I can encourage everyone to invite a business owner that is leading a non-professional services firm, primarily because, again, there's so many of you that represent professional services firms that we don't want them to come in and essentially create a conflict there, right? So if you know anyone that serves or that is leading a company that is either in the industrial space, petroleum and energy, manufacturing, construction and design, those would be great individuals. As you've noticed, there are some here that belong to those companies. If you're a trusted advisor, which the term you may have heard on several instances throughout this entire conversation and even prior to that, if you are a trusted advisor, this is going to reinforce your relationship with your client. Bring them in here. And we also have a very specific non-solicitation policy. So it's not like someone's coming in and poach your client.
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what I said.
Thank you, everyone.